I've been looking at it this whole meeting. I just love it. Yeah, sure.
No, I just noticed that.
And Kathy was on it in the classroom while the kids were doing their work.
There she goes.
She's amazing. And she said if the kids didn't love it.
Oh, I know this is great. That's the same.
Especially sometimes the kids that have trouble connecting with other staff.
Okay, we're ready to go here, guys. So we'll open with a prayer. Did you guys get the prayer? Did they get the prayer? Okay. All right. We're going to open with a prayer. It's a big one. Robert?
I'm not ready.
We're going to wait till the deacon's ready.
You're ready?
Okay.
Oh, I thought I was ready. There you go. All right. May the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "In praying, do not babble like the pagans, who think that they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him. This is how you are to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. If you forgive men their transgressions, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive men, neither will your Father forgive your transgressions." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Opening prayer. Lord Jesus, teach me to pray as you pray to the Father. I want to join in your mission for our salvation and your communion with the Holy Trinity. I want to pray like you.
Many words. The Our Father prayer is probably one, if not the most, frequently recited traditional prayer of the Church. It is offered daily at every Mass and in the divine office, which is prayed by every Roman Catholic priest and in many orders of religious sisters and lay people as well. Also called the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father introduces each of the 5 decades of the Rosary. It is reasonable to assume, therefore, that the Our Father is prayed many, many thousands of times a day. Because it is so familiar, we can sometimes find ourselves reciting this beautiful prayer thoughtlessly, babbling like the pagans. Our Lord understands this tendency, but when we catch ourselves being distracted, we can simply return our mind to heartfelt prayer which pleases him. As Saint Edmund reminds us, it is better to say one Our Father fervently and devoutly than 1,000 with no devotion and full of distraction.
Your Father knows what you need. Vocal prayer is like the Our Father, are said repeatedly and sometimes distractedly, but they are nevertheless an important component of prayer life of the Church. The Catechism states, the tradition of the Church possesses to the faithful certain rhythms of praying intended to nourish continual prayer. Vocal prayer is an essential element of Christian life. When we're vigilant and attentive during vocal prayer, we are engaging in the rhythm of the Church. As we make an effort to say our prayers fervently, the Lord blesses and nourishes our relationship with Him.
This is how you are to pray. Reciting the Our Father can lift our hearts, since Jesus prays with and for us to God our Father. The experience can lead us to profound gratitude. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thank you, God and Creator, for loving us as your children and allowing us to call you Father. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you, Jesus, for including us in your kingdom here on earth and for sending your Holy Spirit to guide us to heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Thank you, Jesus, for being truly present with us in the Eucharist. Forgive us our trespasses. Thank you, Lord, for your forgiveness every time we sin and for strengthening us against further sin through the sacrament of reconciliation. As we forgive those who trespass against us, thank you, Holy Spirit, who gives us the strength and desire to forgive others. Lead us not into temptation. Thank you, Lord, for the Church, which teaches us right from wrong and good from evil, and provides the sacraments so we can always choose right and good. But deliver us from evil. Thank you for the gift of our guardian angel and Saint Michael to protect us and bring us safely home to you.
Conversing with Christ. Lord, thank you for teaching us how to pray. Thank you for showing us how to worship the Father and how to be his children. Grant us the grace to be more attentive at Mass and whenever we pray our Father, so that we can pray our prayer with in and through you.
Our
Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. That was beautiful. Okay. So we will have the land acknowledgement.
Before we begin, the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education would like to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional land of the Blackfoot people who have welcomed here for centuries the Cree, the Métis, other First Nations, and non-Indigenous people. The land is now recognized as the traditional territory of Treaty 7 to the north, west, and south, and Treaty 4 to the east. The Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education also wishes to thank the First Nations people, past and present, for welcoming us here.
Thank you. Okay, now to the best part. We have Kim here tonight to be recognized by excellence for her excellence in Catholic education. And I can't be happier than to introduce this. So we will have,
We want to call up Neil and Vaughn to just share some of the reasons why they nominated Kim for this very beautiful, prestigious award.
Well, thank you everyone for having us here. It's a very special day for us, and it's one that we take we don't take it lightly. We're so proud to be here. I've been so blessed to be able to come as the third time now to bring one of our staff towards you. We started a few years ago with Mr. Lanigan, and then we had Mr. Bizzoni, and now we have Kim with us. And when I did a write-up for her, I thought, how can I shorten it up and just tell you all just how great she is? And I can't. So I'd like to read it to you, and I don't usually read stuff, but I'd like to read to you a little bit of a story about her because she's such a special, strong person. And when I wrote it, I actually titled it, Our Faith Warrior. And the question could be asked, what are the characteristics of a warrior? And well, according to most sources, a warrior needs to be brave, and an experienced soldier. And so her story begins. Chapter 1. Her faith. The sword of strength to her. Kim's religious faith is everything to her. She truly treasures it. Kim is a very strong, devoted Catholic who attends Holy Family Parish with her 2 daughters and her son. Kim's life in the past several years has been challenged in ways that no one would want. Kim's husband, Tyler, was diagnosed with cancer about 5 years ago. Together, Kim and Tyler worked their way through his sickness, supporting each other and their very active children who were immersed in their school sports. Kim and Tyler, through the grace and the power of God, never tried to miss a game or a road trip and loved spending time together as a family. Just over a year ago, unfortunately, Tyler lost his battle to his disease and passed away. It was a very hard time for Kim and her 3 children. Obviously, no one could understand why this great husband and father could be taken away from them at such a young age. To most, this would cause us to really question our faith. Through it all, Kim would always tell us that it was her faith that kept her and her children strong. They never questioned it, but turned to it for comfort and support. To me, this is when a brave warrior really needs to rise to the occasion and fight, and that is just what Kim did. She fought to rebuild her family and used her faith as a source of strength to do so. I'm not so sure I could be the warrior she was and is. Chapter 2. Let the wounded come to me. Kim became Notre Dame's counselor several years ago. This was a position that we knew she'd be great in because of her love for students and their well-being. Kim really understands that building relationships with students is the very key to being able to help them. I have witnessed over the years her compassion, her understanding, and her guidance that she offers our struggling students. She always brings prayer and her faith into her sessions with students. She really has a way of treating our students the way that Jesus would have. She offers them someone to listen to, someone to guide them, and helps them make their way through whatever they're dealing with. She really uses a tough love approach, and our students really respect that. To be honest, I've seen her work with staff members and parents the same way. She draws upon past experiences and her own as well, and is able to give those in need hope for a better tomorrow. This is when she uses her experience, warrior skills. Chapter 3. Walk the talk. Kim is always very vocal and stands up and fights for her faith. She really encourages our staff to remember that we are here in a Catholic school for a reason. We're here to share and inspire our faith in our students, in our parents, and especially in ourselves. To her, that is our number one role as a Catholic school teacher. And our final chapter, live your faith, don't just read about it. I've never seen Kim, and I know Lon will say this as well, I've never seen Kim take a lunch break over the last several years here at Notre Dame. She's always running a leadership group that does unbelievable things for students and community members of Notre Dame, or is involved in some service project, such as her Christmas store, that students can get involved in. Kim wants her students and our students to live their faith, not just read about it in religion class. And we both truly admire her for that. So folks, I want you to put your hands together because it's such an honor to present her with excellence in Catholic education.
Would you say a few words? Let's stand.
You do whatever you want.
Well, one thing is very difficult to hear things about yourself, but I really appreciate. You know, it's been such an honor, but like very humbling to me because I mean, when you work with such good people, and throughout my life, my education, like even when I went to school, I had such strong role models, like all around me. So I'm very grateful. Coming from a small little town, Schuler, our faith was a very, very powerful thing there, and we grew up that way. And you know, I think I just carried that with mom and dad are like the root of everything that sorry. That I am. So this is I'm very honored. Let me just get myself together. Everything that I do is for my family and for the kids that I work with. So I'm very touched and honored. It's a very humbling thing. So I just want to say something that I was telling you about. I actually taught her and Rose for the first 12, 13 years of my career. And I was sick at home on the couch, and something, I don't really honestly know what it was, but something made me pick up the phone, and this is a true story. Picked up the phone and I called this office and I asked to speak to the superintendent. And I loved my job out at 7 persons I taught, and I taught with very strong teachers out there. But something just, I picked it up and I just said, can I please speak to the superintendent? And Mr. Leahy was the superintendent at this time, and I didn't even really know what I was going to say to him, and I just asked I said, I know you probably don't know me. I'm Kim Ray, and he goes, well, I remember you. You're the one with the 3 little kids at church. And I'm sure he knows why, but I just said, I'm just wondering if there's any openings in your school division, because I'm really not sure why I'm calling you, but I'm sick at home, and I just picked up the phone and phoned you, and his answer to me was, he said, he said, keep your ears open, because you never know, there might be something that he said, for sure the Holy Spirit is guiding you. And I got a job right away, and I have never looked back. I feel very, very comfortable and very fortunate and grateful that I have been teaching in the Catholic system, because that's where my heart is, and I can just express the way that I actually feel. So, when you work with great people, good things come out of that. And throughout my whole life, that's kind of, I've been very fortunate. And so my legacy, my mom and dad gave me mine through their role modeling. And I know Mom's looking down, probably very, very proud right now. That I'm leaving for my kids, hopefully, the same kind of foundation that my parents gave me. So I really appreciate Lon and Neil. I couldn't ask for better, role models to work with as well. We have a very strong division. It's very, very good people in our school division and good leaders. So, just very grateful. So, thank you, and I am truly honored. But this award is I'm offering it up for myself.
I remember those days, because the Rays and the Leahys used to kind of, our niche in the church was up in the choir loft. And our kids used to play together while Mass was going on. So,
Wasn't that for people that got there late?
actually, if we could ask Mr. Bosch to stay behind after, we're going to have another ceremony.
If I can just call you forward.
And I apologize for doing that.
It's a award and certificate for your excellence in Catholic education, and I can attest to this as well. I taught your daughter, and I've known you for 100 years, so and we're both from that North Country out there. So,
Well, thank you. Very honored. Thank you.
Kim, Peter Grad would say, nothing bad ever comes from Schuler.
Oh, that's right.
Or Empress.
Or Empress, okay.
Tell Dan Freed you can't go to heaven unless you kiss the ground in Empress. Hopefully Gary will be happy with my talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
See you guys.
I apologize that that just happened. That was Thanks, guys.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
Believe how big our kids are.
What was the name of the church on Schuler, Mr. Helen?
Joseph's, I believe.
Because that's why we have to put it down. St. Mary's, St. Joseph, and Christ King.
Right.
Okay. How can I get just? Thanks. Okay, where are we at here? Number 5, approval of the minutes. Does everybody have a chance to look at them? Any errors or omissions? Got somebody pass that? Approve the minutes? David? All in favor? Okay. Approval of the agenda. Anybody errors or omissions there that you would like, or additions, I guess not omissions, that you would like to add? Oh, so can we have approval of the agenda?
I'll move the adoption of the agenda.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, board communications, we don't seem to have anything there. Okay, Catholic Education, 8.1, School Parish Relations Committee. Deacon Robert?
So I have nothing to report, but I do plan on requesting a meeting with Dwayne and Heather soon. And just to discuss how we're going to move forward.
Okay, and Heather, do you have anything to add?
Attached. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Leahy?
When do we see Dr. Sarnik starting this? Guess what I'm asking is, what do we see the timeline, him coming, doing the report, and then seeing the final product here?
Yeah, he's, I checked with him a few weeks ago, his availability is April. Right now, he's teaching a course at the university, and so kind of got tied up. And so, and he wanted to come to be in person to do the school tours and all that, but after that, you know, we would still be shooting prior to the end of June to have all of this work done and the recommendations there in the fall.
So I do have a question or a comment for the
Okay.
religious ed committee. I did volunteer to sit on that committee, and it is open to as many trustees that would like to sit on it. So just to encourage anyone else who might be interested.
I would like to sit on that.
You can sit on everything.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I think
Small children.
you can claim your hands on everything
Yeah.
already.
But I would like to be involved in that. Any other questions for Heather? Okay, we'll move on to board work plan, 3-year and 10-year capital plan. Mr. McPherson.
Thanks. So the Board of Trustees annually approves the 3-year capital plan. The capital plan is attached to the board agenda. We need to report up to Alberta Ed by April 1st. So this is the right time to be looking at the capital plan. FWBA was previously contracted to prepare the capital plan, and that was previously approved by the Board of Trustees. The current situation is static, and as such, the existing plan remains valid. The plan has been updated, however, with the current ACU ratios, some population information, and other selected data. This is part of your board work plan. And what we have within here is, like I said, the same plan as last year. The number 1 priority remains the St. Mary's School right sizing and modernization, while the number 2 priority is the Mother Teresa School right sizing and modernization. There is a plan to recontact with FWBA later this year, based on their suggestion that we re-evaluate the plan and ensure that the plan is still relevant for our current situation. So that's something that we'll be working with FWBA probably in the fall, and based on that, we'll be approaching the board. This would be well timed if there's any grade reconfiguration or boundary changes that we would integrate all of that into one process. So the recommendation that I have for the trustees is to approve the plan. Is be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education approve the 2022-25 3-year capital plan as presented.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hestel.
I will move the approval of the 3-year capital plan.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Kinch?
Chair, I'm curious as to why, or maybe it's because we're still exploring Sisters of Charity project. Is that why it's not appearing here?
So the Sisters of Charity project is a school building, and one of the options would be to include the Sisters of Charity of St. Louis Theater into the capital plan. The challenge we would have, though, is theaters are not funded by Alberta Education. So we could put it at our number 1 priority, but the likelihood of it getting approved is low, like quite low. So based on the discussion that we had in the February meeting, where we made a proposal to include it as part of the capital plan, there was no decision made to include it, so therefore we kept the capital plan exactly as it is presented here.
Chair?
Mr. Mestel and then
Sure.
Mr. Kinch.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Just as a bit of a continuation, so we've talked about that project, and it kind of had 2 parts. One part was the theater, then there's the other classrooms and kind of fitness facility. My understanding is that could be funded by the provincial government, and again, I would ask why we're waiting to include that in our priority list.
It's a good question based on a lot of the unknowns related to the SCSL in terms of whether this would be a phased-in project or just one massive project. Based on the timing of whether we would want to continue on with our project, not knowing when Alberta Education may or may not approve the project in its entirety. It probably would be problematic to start putting it onto the capital plan while still proceeding in another direction. However, this may need to be reevaluated once we get ministerial approval to proceed with the SCSL center, and could be thrown into the mix as part of a revised plan for next year.
So we can change this?
Well, every year we submit a
Right.
new capital plan based on the priorities.
But if we submit it, can we change it then or not until next year?
We would change it next year.
Mr. Meso?
Thank you, Chair. Greg, can you remind me where the numbers come from for the right sizing of St. Mary's, for example, and all of the others? Do those come from the architects? And
In terms of the dollar amounts,
the amount of the project, the 12,600,000, it's very specific numbers, so I'm just wondering where it comes from.
so we use the Alberta Education guidelines in terms of the cost for construction of per square meter, renovation per square meter, based on some estimates that the FWBA went through. They just extrapolated meters per rate and then came up with that.
So it's a number then, in other words, that has come from the architect. It's not something that we've generated here.
No, this came from the architect going through a process of
Thank you.
assessment.
Mr. Leahy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I note that currently we have 1,240 available seats in Medicine Hat Catholic. And what's our current enrollment? It's off the top here. It's probably here somewhere.
The current enrollment, all in bums and seats is around 2,600.
And then-
students and children.
And then the report says that even though it's not, we can't put much validity in it, that over the next 50 years, we should expect to see approximately 1,400 students, new students. And so I think depending on conditions, at least in the short term, in 3 years and 10 years, these numbers are showing us that we shouldn't expect any kind of new schools in our division.
That's correct. The number one and number two priorities are right sizing, and
Right.
Alberta Ed does look favorably upon right sizing of schools, which actually that benefits us based on how our PON funding is
Right.
calculated, because we do have a fairly mild ACU number, so that right sizing would drive up our ACU,
And ACU stands
area
for,
capacity utilization.
I would be interested to know in some of our, I'm scrolling through here to see, like at McCoy, what's McCoy's utilization right now?
I don't have that rate with me.
It's
Last I
okay.
recall, it was in the 60% range.
Like when I look at, I'm looking at McCoy and it says FCI not availavailable. What does FCI mean?
Facility Conditions Index, because it was recently modernized, and for a variety of factors, but one of them being in COVID, the audits that Alberta Education does on each of the school buildings hasn't been completed yet. We have been in contact with Alberta Infrastructure and Alberta Education about this, and they are looking to revitalize that process.
Then as you go down, it has capacity 857, and then 0.03 ACU bracket 2017-18 is 527, 61.5%. And then there's a 4 and a 5. So currently, what I'm gathering from McCoy is that the enrollment is trending down, and that is it making a prediction that the ACU in 2029 will be down to 47.1%? Is that what that's saying?
That's what this is projecting. However, anything out past five years is really a crystal ball.
I just wanted to clarify some of this.
There are, when we look at the birth patterns, there is a declining birth rate within the community, and that will likely carry through for a period of time.
Just as a general comment, I think, I've been, since the minister announced the 15 projects that were going to be getting some money, I've been doing some work on going to different division websites and looking at their capital plans. And I want to commend Mr. McPherson for the detail that's in this one. Some of the plans are literally 2 pages. Thank you for that. 2, I think the board needs to have some in-depth discussions about our utilization rates and going forward in terms of space in some of our schools and us being efficient with that. And I think we may need to be creative because we're not going to see a lot of growth, and these numbers are showing they might even be a little bit lower. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments on that for Greg? Bernie, did you have anything? No. Deacon Robert?
No, great report.
Mr. Mastel?
No, I've asked my questions, thank you.
Good. All right, we can move on then. And, or do we need to, we need to do this. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education approve the 22 to 25 3-year capital plan as presented. Robert?
Well, I think you already made the motion.
Yeah, there's a
What did you already
motion
make?
already.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Pass. Okay. 22, 23 fees. Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. This, again, is a regular occurrence through the board plan. It's regarding the school fees for next year. According to our AP, these need to be approved by the end of March. Overall, the fees remain largely the same, and any changes have been noted beside the fee. I do want to express my gratitude for Amanda for her leadership in running this project. I think it's run very well. All schools have provided what their recommendations for changes are, and those have been analyzed and then included into this report. So the recommendation that I have for the trustees is that be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education approve the 2022 to 23 school fee schedule as presented.
Bernie? Any discussion here? Any questions, Mr. Lee?
What's the cost of a bus trip in town these days?
I believe it's $59 round trip.
Okay, thank you.
However, with the price of fuel, I wouldn't be too surprised if we're looking at fuel surcharges, at least for next year.
Any other questions or comments? These are pretty standard, like they're pretty much the same as last year's.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of changes.
Yeah.
And then there's only a few new ones that have. One thing to keep in mind, we get the schools to ask for more, knowing that some of the school fundraising societies will fund some of the activities. But it gives the schools latitude in the event that the fundraising doesn't occur, then they can go back to the school fee schedule and charge the rate. Otherwise, they can't charge.
So that this is at the beginning of the year, right? The fees are at the
Effective
beginning?
September 1st,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, any questions, comments? All in favor? All right, boundary review and attendance areas, Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. So we started this process back in January, and it's part of both an AP 305 as well as the board work plan, and boundaries and attendance areas need to be approved no later than March 31st. We assessed on two items. First is there's been no request from senior administration or from schools to look at adjustments for the school attendance areas or the boundaries. There was one nuance that we wanted to assess, and that was with Cooley Ridge subdivision, which is in the southern part of the city. That entire development is fully encapsulated within the St. Patrick's and Notre Dame school boundary. Currently, we don't have any students in there. However, we looked at, and with the help of Chelsea, we assessed the number of lots, applied a formula for estimating the number of potential Catholic students in there. And we came up to about 15 Medicine Catholic students once that subdivision is fully built out. That uptake can be managed within the existing attendance zone schools and as well as the allocated school buses. So based on that information, there was no need to adjust the attendance or the boundaries for Cooley Ridge subdivision. So what does that mean? It means there's no recommendation at this time for making any change.
Okay, good. Any comments? And the last one there, second quarter 21-22 financial update.
Thank you. So this is the time for our quarterly update. This is based on actuals as of February 28th. We've put together the report. It's attached both to your agenda package, and we sent out an email earlier on this. On page 6 of the report, we can determine that for the current year, our projected surplus is looking at $306,000. Now, this is a bit of a change, but it fully reflects now the disposition of the sale of the former St. Louis. Overall, the expenditure projection has increased $800,000 or 3% from the May approved budget, and we'll be going through the details on why there's some swings there. The actual spending is at 52% of the projection, which is, in our opinion, on target for the time frame. Within the revenue side, and this is on page 7, the projected revenue has increased 1.5 million from the original budget. Now, there's been some changes that have occurred. For example, we now have the clawbacks, which we've estimated based on our enrollment. So that is a figure of about $457,000 of clawbacks within the current year. We are now aware of the government's intent to hold school boards harmless in 22-23 based on our 21-22 numbers. So we'll be seeing those effects in the accumulated operating surplus and then offset by increased revenue next year. We've included the $93,000 related to the learning loss grant. We do expect additional monies coming through for the grade 1 learning loss numbers and eventually, hopefully, grade 2 and 3. You already got 2 and 3, so it's just the grade 1. So we don't have those final numbers available at this point. IMR, or the Infrastructure Maintenance Renewal Grant, we've set that at $273,000, and that's based on the IMR plan, which was approved in December. So that's a reduction of $110,000 from our budget. We don't lose that money. That money sits in deferred revenue. So whenever we engage in further IMR projects, we will just transfer the money from deferred revenue. The prior year funding or the recovery of the $511,000, we've talked about this about 16 times since September. We have removed that from the budget based on the ministry direction received in late August 2021 regarding the accounting treatment of the recovery. There are some adjustments to the ATRF, or the Alberta Teachers Retirement Fund, of $10,000, and that's just from the estimated impact from the staff we currently have in place. The next major big change is the fees are $10,000 higher than budgeted, and that's based on the actual enrollment and the realized collections from that enrollment. Preschool fees are up $90,000 based on the actual enrollment and realized collections. International education continues to be very positive. The revenue budget is up $188,000 based on the increased enrollment. There was some changes we made previously. The agent fees of $61,000 were being netted against revenue. I've looked at that, and I've changed my mind on how we should account for that. It shouldn't be netted against revenue, but as a separate expense line. So that's just going to change the dynamic, but it doesn't change the bottom line. School generated funds are up $178,000. The numbers that we received from schools back in April were extremely conservative, and now we're seeing actual activity, actual fundraising occurring. So we've adjusted that budget accordingly, and that's consistent with what we're seeing on actuals. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, the gain on disposal of assets now shows up on the revenue side. So that was $550,000. We will see expenses on the expenditure side of $45,000, which gives us a net proceeds of $504,000. And as we've talked about previously, those amounts will be transferred to the capital reserve. Our amortization of capital allocations, that revenue line increases by $407,000, which is completely offset by an increase of expenditures of $407,000. So the reason why we're seeing those higher numbers there is when we set the budget back in April, we used the previous year amortization number. So it goes in both on the expenditure and revenue side. Now that we know what has transpired, for example, the Johnson Controls, our CMR and IMR activity, we go from what our budget is to what our actuals are. So that's an increase of $407,000. And with the Johnson Controls being such a large project, we can expect our amortization for the next few years to be high. So that's about the projection. When we look at our actual revenue lines, we are currently at 53.4% of the projection, which is pretty much exactly where we want to be. With regards to the funding model amounts, we've received 50.3%, so that's perfect, and because it represents 6 months throughout the fiscal year. Other sources of revenue are at 69.8%. Some of that is inflated because of because of the revenue we're recognizing from the sale of the former St. Louis. It's front-end loaded, so it doesn't evenly go over the 12 months. If we exclude that, we're at 59.8%, which we feel is exactly on target, given that the school year is 10 months while our fiscal year is 12. So in my opinion, the actual revenue is on track for the second quarter. Looking at the expenditure side, overall, our projected expenditures have increased. Within the instruction side, the numbers have increased by $139,000, and that represents 51%. So That again is completely consistent with where we need to be for the year. Within the instruction pool line, we've had some changes there. The French monitor was not approved for the division, so we've excluded that from that budget, as well as the health and wellness program was moved from the instructional pool to a separate budget code called divisional programming. Within the instruction pool, we're still trending a bit low, but there's a lot of back-ended expenditures there. For example, the school resource officer, we reimbursed the city of Medicine Hat Police Service in May, as well as the summer work experience costs, as well as second semester course fees will be coming out in third and fourth quarter. So we're seeing a lot of back-end costs within that budget code. Instructional staffing, the projection in there has increased by $57,000, and that reflects the actual activity that's occurring. The actuals are representing 49% of the projection, so we're really close. However, we know our benefit rates go up in January, and a lot of staff, once we hit January, CPP, EI, those types of costs start coming on. So we expect to see higher benefit utilization throughout the third and fourth quarters. We talked briefly about the higher revenue in international ed, while we also have higher expenditures in international ed. That's from all the activities, as well as from the home state program. So that increased cost is about $195,000. The projection is showing, the actuals are at about 45% of the projection, so it's a little bit low. And given the newness of the program, we're going to keep working with the international ed program to ensure the projections are accurate. Religious ed, there is no change, and we are generally on target for the budget. School budgets, there is no material change to the projection. Their actuals are at 56%, which means they are generally on target, given that schools generally work on a 10-month cycle. School generated funds, we talked about them having higher revenue, and they also have higher expenses. So the projected increase on expenditures in school generated funds was $78,000. The actuals are at 78% of projection, which might indicate the projection is low. So we're going to keep working with the schools to ensure that we understand where that school generated fund amount is. We have to keep in mind, though, the SGF amounts doesn't impact our divisional operating funding, and it doesn't have a impact on our usable accumulated operating surplus or the reserve. Nutrition program is no change, and they're on target. Technology, the projection was reduced by $4,000 because of lower division internet fees. Actuals are at 62%. We do have a lot of front-end loaded aspects in technology. So all the workstations plus the software software licensing are paid in September. So we would expect to see a lot. That 62% is reasonable. Learning services, so Hugh's budget very specifically, the projection has increased $67,000, and that's based on needs plus the higher learning assistant average salary than what we had forecasted for. The actuals are at 55%, which is generally consistent with the program. Support staff within the program are generally on a 10-month cycle. However, benefits do get extended over the 12 months for many of the staff. Program unit funding. We have a reduction within the projection of $209,000, and that reflects the actual lower enrollment as well as the structure of where kids are being coded within program unit funding. The actuals show that they're at 53%, which is good. It reaffirms that the projection is good, as well as it shows that it's consistent with where the program is at, because the support staff are generally on a 10-month cycle, just like as Hugh's budget is. Early ed is that projection increased a small amount by $21,000, and that was based on enrollment needs, and actuals are at 47% of the budget, which is slightly low compared to the time frame. But one thing to keep in mind is all the staff in early ed are certificated staff who are paid over 12 months cycle. So it's not, it's closer to that 50%. So we'll keep a watch on that, and we'll take Terry to make sure that we're good there. So that was the instruction expenditure side. On the plant operations and maintenance, the projection there increased by quite a bit, $216,000, and we briefly had a discussion about that last month. The major driver for that increase is with the utility costs. Our costs are significantly higher than what we had budgeted. So we've increased the budget for that line item by $170,000. We are quite fortunate, though, based on the Johnson Controls project, that has backstopped us. If it wasn't for our lower consumption, our costs would be quite a bit higher. So we're quite fortunate. We also made sure that there was a line item in the budget for the current year related to the SCSL projects, and that wasn't included as part of the May 21 budget approval. So that has been included. Actuals are at 53%, which is slightly higher than our time frame. There are quite a few high front-end loaded costs. For example, insurance, that's all already paid for. We also expect a lower rate of utility consumption as the warmer wet weather emerges. So that 53% is probably pretty close to where we should be at this point. When we talked about our amortization, we also have the increased expenditure because of that amortization. So that's $423,000. We've included the sale of the former St. Louis, so the actual expenditures related to that sale were $45,000, so that increased the projection. But we have an offsetting lower IMR costs because of our actual IMR plan. So the projection for the capital increased by $350,000. Transportation, there's no change to the projection. Actuals are at 55% of the budget. It is a 10-month budget, and we are on target. The parent provided transportation expenses are realized in June and July, which will bring us to what we're expecting to be a balanced budget there. What could be an issue is with the increased fuel costs, particularly in the last handful of weeks. So we'll have to assess what that means for us, and once we have that information, we'll be in a better position to determine what changes may or may not have to occur. Board and system governance, the projection there increased by $34,000. There's two major drivers there. Legal fees have been higher than what we were budgeted for, so that we've increased that line item by $15,000. And staffing costs increased by $23,000 based on the actual activities we have. Our actuals are at 52% of the projection, which we feel is on target. Our external services, the first one is out of school care. So that's the before and after school program. There's been no change to that projection, and the actuals are at 55% of projection, which is completely consistent with where we expect to be. And external services preschool, the projection increased by $150,000 based on the actual activities. Expenses are at 56% of the budget, which is consistent with the time frame. So we're pretty much exactly where we want to be with regards to our actuals. There is one item that is affecting our net assets, and that's with regards to the restrictions that we have on our reserve. So we were approved by the minister to use $362,000 of our accumulated operating reserve this year. We have about $156,000 left of that reserve as it currently stands for use. Now we are looking at, and we have the approval for modernizing all the computers within the division. The revised amount for that is $242,000. So there's about $100,000 that we won't be able to immediately finance through the use of the reserve. So I'm looking at three different options. First is working with the IT department to determine the exact rollout schedule of the computers and see if we can transition a portion of those computers into September 1st of 2022. The second option that Dwayne and I are working on is exploring leasing arrangements, and we're looking to have a meeting set up with a potential leaseor this week. And then the third option, which I've already started the process on, is applying to the ministry to expand the reserve use limit, which I think is probably the more feasible solution. We have the money set aside. It's in capital reserve for asset replacement. So what I'm asking is that we can tap into those dollars, which were earmarked very specifically for asset replacement. And so we'll see what response we get back from the ministry on that. So I will pause, because I'm sure you will want to adjust what I've said, and I'm ready to answer any questions if you have any.
Is it in September, in the first half, that we spend more than the second half, or is it the other way around?
It depends on which program it is.
Okay.
So there's a lot more front-ended loaded costs than back.
That's what I was thinking, like these numbers in the 50% range. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
50% is halfway through the year.
But we spend more at the start.
In most programs, but there are some where we do have back-ended costs, such as our benefit rates tend to be higher on our last half of the year than the first half.
Any questions or comments?
At our last meeting, when we went through the budget, we were looking at a substantial deficit.
So that substantial deficit was related to the 22-23 year. So this is looking at the 21-22 year. And this is coming up in the agenda, but the budget numbers for 22-23, we haven't received what those numbers are yet. So I can't fully comment on next year's budget until we get those funding profiles. However, I will comment that it is looking a lot better than what I was fearing.
Well, with the price of oil, I think that is going to help us. My concern is, because I was reflecting on your last report, are there things we need to be doing and looking at so that we're not running into potential deficits, not expecting, a windfall from the province, every couple of years to bail us out. So that's, I'm not sure how you would answer that, but I mean, that's my biggest concern when I listen to you, share the numbers and all
With the new funding model, we haven't had a chance to even go through a whole cycle of the new funding model. We keep getting held harmless, which is a good thing. We've had opinions and I'm not supportive of that, but we haven't had a chance to really see the funding model fully develop, and it's leaving us in a very good position now. But there will be a correction at some point, and how the government rolls out that correction process, if it'll just be a guillotine and chop off the bridge funding, or if they will allow that bridge funding to be phased out over a period of time. And then based on that will really be how we have to react and respond to that.
I think the second part of that too, though, is that the introduction of this model coincides with the budget plan that the government had, and that is up this year. And then coincidentally, we're going to be running into an election cycle. So depending on how much they allot for education in the next cycle, the next stretch, will probably have a significant impact. Because I'm guessing they're going to fund for growth going into the election year, which will be a positive note for a lot of the jurisdictions, because with the previous budget over the last 3 years, I think it was, they were estimating $50 a barrel for oil in their projections, which, as we saw this year with the rise in oil, allowed them to achieve a balanced budget. So that should theoretically impact education funding moving forward as we go into the next cycle. But
well, it's just like, this is my 9th budget, and the way things can turn, it's just incredible, right? Like, you think it's like the worst case scenario, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're out. But I mean, that being said, I think we need to really look at what we're doing to ensure that we're not running into a deficit. And I understand the new funding model and all that. I'm very confused, actually. And with COVID and all that, it's just adds to the confusion or the uncertainty of it all. Those are my comments, I guess. I'm not sure if they make much sense, but
once we know what the funding profiles are, we'll be in a much better position to comment with authority in terms of what this budget means for us. Does that answer your question, Deacon Walden?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? David, did you have anything?
Yes. Unlike Deacon Risling, when on 2 revenue Roman numeral V5, I don't understand that. Could you explain that in layman's terms? The prior fund recovery.
Yeah, we've talked about this a handful of times. I'm sure you're still confused about this. So the government provides us with the I'm going to back up. Last year we had lower enrollment, so they clawed that money back, right? But the clawback doesn't occur until 2021-22.
The next year.
The next year.
Okay.
So as part of the budget process, we went with what the government told us. Late August, we get new information saying, oh no, you actually have to book that loss in 2021. So we take that recovery, which is supposed to occur in 21-22, and we included that as part of the budget, and that recovery actually hits our previous year financial statement. So we set the budget expecting this loss, but based on the new information from the government, it actually goes against the previous year. So it's a bit of a timing issue, but it does create the optics that, and it creates these waves, right? Where we're expecting this lower number in the budget, then when you get to year end, it's higher. So it's all about timing. In the government's defense, this was the first time they've ever had this hold harmless. So there was a lot of confusion around that. Now that this is the second time through, I think we're in a much better position to be able to record this and report it more accurately for the budget for the upcoming year.
This next question, it doesn't have any impact on the budget in terms of surplus or deficits, but I see we have a interchange agreement. What exactly is this teacher doing?
So we have a teacher. I think Dwayne might be in a better place to.
Sure. So this was a request from Alberta Education. They have teachers that are seconded to work on assessment and curriculum and so on. And so we had a request from Alberta Education to hire this teacher because she was seconded from a different jurisdiction, and they had some sort of agreement with her with respect to retirement or something like that, and her contract ended with them. And I'm not sure in terms of why they didn't want to extend her contract for one more year so that Alberta Education could second her. But the short of it is that they asked if we would hire her and then second her.
Okay. So she's not actually working in Medicine Hat, she's in Edmonton working on assessment then?
That's correct.
Okay.
There is a benefit to us though in that, although we haven't been able to take advantage of it just yet, but she is willing to come down because she works for us at no cost to us to work with staff on diploma exams and so on. So it's something that we're hoping that in the spring we're going to be able to utilize for services of it.
So that whole amount covers, is that a live cost then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little bit concerned when I see that international education, its revenue goes up by 188,000, but then its expenses go up by 195,000. That worries me. Like if we're because here's how I'm imagining it works, that in April and May, there was a budget set for international education. And then we went into the year that way. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but we then see since the start of the school year, an increase of 188,000 based on increased enrollment. And then maybe part of it is this change in accounting practices. Then we have expenses that are more than what our increase in revenue was. I need some help on that one.
So there's a couple of immediate answers to that. First is we hadn't budgeted for any money going to Monsignor McCoy. So we've come to an agreement with Monsignor McCoy to provide them with funds within the current year. So that's $10,000 that we hadn't expected. We've had a staffing hired to help support international ed. That wasn't forecasted in the budget setup, so that's been included as well. This is also, I quite frankly, we haven't really gone through a good year with international ed. This is really the first time where we've had any sizable activity. So there's a few things that we're still working through in order to assist in international ed. What we have to keep in mind though is international ed is turning a profit this year. Even though the expenses went up higher than what the projected expenses went up higher than what the projected revenue. The projected revenue was quite a bit, is totally higher than what the expenditures are.
I saw that there was a mention of $23,000 in additional money for staffing here in central office without identifying an individual. What was that for?
To assist in the front end. So the front part of the office, and that position is cost shared with another program.
Okay, so that's like reception duties then? Is that what?
Yes.
Then, my recollection might be wrong. And I thought when we agreed to do this upgrade for our computers, that my recollection was that we were told that we had all that money.
Yes.
Now I'm reading that, well, we don't have all that money, so we have to go into another area to get it. So that worries me. So I need to understand that piece some more.
So what had happened with this in the November, December time frame, we were looking at where our actuals were expected to be the projection. When the clawback came through that $420,000, we were expecting that all the programs were going to reduce their expenditures by $423,000, which is what the plan was. Unfortunately, our revenue declined by the 423, but the offsetting expenditure didn't decline by 423. It only declined by about half. So that pushed us from having that money available to cover this project to not having all those funds available. So when we got through December and into January, when we actually started to sit down and say, okay, in those programs, were you able to recover that 423? The responses we got back were no, they can't. The staffing is set, the programming is set, and so we are now living with a higher than expected expenditure there. Now, complicating this is we now are getting the whole harmless funding. So that money will be available for us, but we won't recognize that until next year.
So now my mind is really boggled. Am I the only one?
I'm confused on this process as well, because it doesn't make, in my mind, the right way of doing it. If I were the government, I'd be giving the whole harmless funding today, but unfortunately.
Sorry, Greg. Are we getting harmless funding for the current budget year?
We received, for the current bus, we received the whole harmless funding this year related to last year, which kept us the same. We'll get the same idea next year. Although we don't know what that funding profile looks like yet.
So help me here, tell me if I got this right. Because of the weighted, what's it called?
Weighted moving average.
Weighted moving average, we had to give back to the government $400 and some thousand, right?
Correct.
But eventually, we're gonna get that money back.
Right.
But meantime, we have to run a district. And so we made this decision to buy this technology. And we couldn't find the equivalent of the $400 and some thousand savings. And so in order to make that piece up, we have to go back into our reserves to make that up or to release it. And then when we made the decision to buy to replace the technology, when we did, we didn't know that we weren't going to be able to generate the $200 and some thousand savings to make it all work.
We had anticipated that we would be able to have $420,000 worth of savings. Unfortunately, that didn't materialize.
Sorry, is anybody else got?
That's okay. Mr. Mescal, did you have anything?
But I do want to reiterate, there are, between the residual left between what the minister approved and what we're projecting to use from our reserve, there's about half of the money required for the computer replacement. And then in our net assets, our capital reserve, we have money set aside for asset replacement, which could include these computers.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Kinch, did
No,
you?
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Did you have anything, Mr. Kinch, that you wanted to ask?
Sure, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Just a prolong. Mr. McPherson, do we have anything that you consider a pressure point that is in need of direct attention or is a great concern at this point?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. The short answer is no. Technology right now is one of the areas where we have a significant focus on. For the upcoming year, one of the pressure points again will be technology, but not from the hardware side, but from the cyber security side. So we'll be seeing quite a bit of discussion over the coming months around that. With regard to pressure points, is there something specific you were looking for there? No, we continue to go through the budget line item by line item each year. Each program has nuances. If you look at any program, they will come and give you a wish list as long as my arm about where they need funding. And unfortunately, unless if we receive some inflow of new funds, we'll be running a status quo budget on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
Mr. Leahy?
I thought Mr. Mastel.
No, go ahead.
He said he didn't.
When we for custodial staff, do we staff a school for the entire space in terms of cleaning it?
The short answer is yes. So what Francis does is he looks at the school, the size of the school, We have some rules of thumb about cleaning area per FTE. So he assigns the custodial staffing to the school based on kind of a square footage cleaning cleaning area by FTE.
By FTE being full-time enrollment?
Yeah, full-time equivalent. So for a custodian who works 8 hours, that would be a 1.0.
Because here's what I'm getting at. If some of our schools have a utilization rate of 50%, less than 50% even, would that be a potential cost saving to mothball some classrooms, clean them in the summer, close and lock the door, and say, for all intents and purposes, that's not part of the equation anymore?
Yes, that could be one of those options. So a place like St. Mary's, you could do that. Unfortunately, a lot of the classes are used for a variety of different things, whether it's a student lounge or so those are things that senior administration probably will need to take a look at as we move forward.
I just see that in the vein of what Deacon Risling was getting at. You know, examining some of our practices, like any home does, any business does, whatever. You know, let's look at the current situation, and if it makes sense and it doesn't hurt. Like I've been in schools where there was space, and you're always looking for storage and that kind of thing. But then again, there's the other side of it when it comes to the budget, and you know.
No, it's not a bad idea. It has been talked about on occasion.
And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm thinking back a while, so it's getting fuzzy. But part of the difficulty with the utilization rates is that if you have biology lab, for example, that's included in the utilization as a classroom, but it might only be used a couple of times a day, you know, and so the percentage is a bit misleading because, you know, we can't have a high school without a biology lab, even if it's not used all day. Same thing with the CPS lab or those types of areas. So even with McCoy's utilization, if you actually look at the number of rooms that are needed, the percentage of utilization probably would be higher. It's just the statistic that Alberta uses based on the size of buildings compared to the number of kids.
That's a fair comment. And on occasion, instead of just at ACU, we go around and count classrooms.
Right. So I agree. My point is that it's worth having perhaps a tough conversation. So do I think it's great that they have a student lounge there at St. Mary's? At least they did, that encompassed two former classrooms. I didn't. But once again, in the spirit of what Stephen Risling said, in examining our operations, depending where we're at, that might be something to look at when you have a school, you know. Anyway. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we don't need any, there's no motion on this, right? This is an update. Okay, let's move on to information items. Dr. Zarichny, strategic priorities update.
So this report is a work in progress. We've changed it before. If you remember, there was a link there, and he said, read at your pleasure there. So we've been a bit more purposeful. Truth be told, I'm still not happy with the layout of this report, and hopefully once we have more specific measurements that we'll have in place for the May version of our strategic plan, that'll help in terms of providing a bit more meaningful information with respect to how far along we are in terms of progress towards our goals. However, the goals have been laid out there, and for the time being anyways, this report will reflect some of the information that will be in next month's report, unless it's specifically relevant to that month or has been done that month, won't be on it. So what I'm saying is that each month you'll get a snapshot of what's been done in the month. The link to the ongoing report will be there, so if you want to look back to see what's happened all year, that'll be available as well in the report, but this should hopefully provide a bit more meaningful information with respect to at least the month's activities. And then once we get the SMART goals established in May, what I would probably propose is that there be quarterly reports that are generated for the board that specifically address progress. Because from month to month, sometimes there may not be a lot done on a specific goal or priority. However, within a quarter, there should be work that's worthy of reporting on, and then the folks that are responsible for that would provide a bit more robust report or even a few minutes discussion and presentation on it.
Good. Any comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, the COVID-19 and education.
So thank you, Chair. This update was, and I believe I shared this information out to trustees anyways in an email as soon as it came out, but it's just to formalize the changes that came out from Alberta Education with respect to COVID. And I received an email actually just before the board meeting that the Premier has tabled, I don't think it's the Premier, it's one of the ministers, tabled Bill 4, which will basically remove a municipality's right with respect to COVID to override the government's health orders. So that should, I'm assuming that will receive readings and pass relatively soon, because there are some communities that have chosen to take an enhanced approach with respect to masking and COVID protocols. And so that basically would eliminate their ability to do that without specific permission from them. Overall, no, things are going well in the schools. We haven't received any feedback one way or the other, which I can report on. I'm significantly pleased to, in either vein. I'm happy not to have to field those calls. I think everyone, for the most part, is making the adjustment quite well. We do have some students that wear masks in school, and as well as staff, and they're perfectly fine and welcome to it. I think everyone's just become accustomed to seeing people wearing that, so no one really gives it a second thought anymore. So that's nice. And principals were asked to make sure that if students or staff choose to wear a mask, that they not be singled out or be harassed for that. And I think so far feedback has gone fairly well. Our attendance rates have improved dramatically since January. I believe we had a few weeks in January where between COVID and the flu and nervousness, some schools at some points during the week would be as high as 30% absenteeism. And now our rates are all under 10% in our schools, which is where we want to be. And we haven't had any significant issues or concerns with teacher shortages or substitute shortages.
Good. Any questions or comments? All right, we'll go on to election campaign.
Thanks. So I just want to thank everyone for getting their election disclosure statements in. I'm pleased to announce that all candidates have submitted the required statements, and in accordance with our responsibilities under the Elections Act, we will make this a public document and we'll be posting it to our division website for as time permits.
Is this something new, Greg? I don't remember doing this in the past.
This is a new process based on this election cycle.
Thank you.
No comment. All right, budget 22-23, Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. We covered most of what I wanted to talk about before. The budget was announced. Overall, I think it's a very, it's a much better budget than what I was expecting and presented to the trustees back in February. Some of the major highlights is a 1% increase to base funding, 1% increase to plant operations and maintenance, and a 4.6% increase to transportation funding. There's also money, $30 million across the province to support students experiencing academic challenges. There's $59 million to support curriculum in implementation. Both of those two items, more information will be announced later. The government is committed to holding school boards harmless, so we will receive the same or higher funding than we have in 21-22. And the government has also announced $2 billion over 3 years to maintain and enhance existing schools. So those announcements have started to come out. Amanda and I have had set up a meeting with our counterparts with some of the other local school jurisdictions to meet with their secretary treasurers and assistant secretary treasurers. We had a very good discussion with them about how they're operationalizing some of these hold harmless issues as well as the clawback issues. Overall, I think it's fair to say we're all experiencing some challenges with forecasting where numbers are coming in, we're making assumptions, and then reality comes in, or clawbacks kick in that we weren't expecting. And so it's creating some of this which is a challenge. We also talked about the bridge funding and what it potentially means for us. There was a presentation at ASBOA, the Association for School Business Officials of Alberta, on the budget that was held on Friday. There was a large discussion on dealing with how the hold harmless is being rolled out. And Education has indicated that they will be holding another presentation on March 17th, and they'll have a further presentation when the funding profiles are finally released on or before the end of March. So that's the information that I have at this point about budget 22-23.
I just had one question on here, that in number 3, that 4.6% increase to transportation.
Yes.
Will that cover that big insurance? Isn't there some big insurance in transportation? Is that enough?
So there is a big issue with insurance transportation, but it doesn't affect us as much as other boards who contract through private providers. So like the mom and pop or organizations that have one or two buses. We set our insurance rates very high, so it $25 million. So there is some impact to Southland on that, but it's not high. What we're wanting for that 4.6% though is to cover our increased fuel costs. So that's been a pressure point for us within the transportation realm for a period of time, and we expect that pressure point to grow.
Because with some of those ASBA meetings, there was a huge issue about insurance, but good, thank you. Anybody else have any question here?
Yeah, one quick question, Greg. The $2 billion that's been set aside for the 3 years, is that the budget where the school improvements and modernizations is coming from?
New schools and modernizations, that's correct.
Thank you.
And that's to support 15 new schools and more modernizations. I'm not sure what the distribution is, but so far we haven't been announced, so they've been less interested.
Any other questions on the budget? Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Lair, Quality Teaching and Learning.
Thank you. Further to Dr. Zarichny's strategic priorities update, this is a more in-depth look at one of the strategic priorities and goals around quality teaching and learning, and some of the work we've been doing for PD with our staff. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. And communication reports. Darian's not here. Does you have something? No?
If anybody
Just
has
what's
any
in here?
questions at all, been in the news a lot, which is a great thing. Guess me and noticed our local change for Lent, too, which is an exciting thing for our local. Yeah, if there's any questions, let me know.
Well, it's been lots in the news, but that's a good thing. Lots of good things. It covered a lot of the schools and, you know, the kids out there shuffling. And I think that's amazing that, you know, people see that. I have that on my Facebook page and I always share those and people are very complimentary. Anybody else? Okay, let's go into the action and discussion items. Notre Dame Academy structural remediation.
Thank you. So this is a request to use $90,000 from our infrastructure maintenance renewal budget, or IMR budget. In the past, we noted that there was cracking in the floor at Notre Dame Academy. It was investigated, and last year we did some remediation work in 3 classrooms. What's essentially happening is the school is shifting just a bit. So based on discussions we've had with FWBA as well as MPE, which is an engineering firm, the recommendation is to address the 3 classrooms on the north side of the building now. So we did the 3 classrooms on the south side. We're wanting to do the 3 classrooms on the north side now. In addition to this, we would also be performing a 3D scan of the building, which will give us a baseline to ensure that the school isn't shifting once these remediation projects are completed. So we're quite excited about that, and then we can monitor that on a go forward basis to ensure we're fine. As I indicated, the total cost is $90,000. Within our 21-22 IMR budget, there's $215,000 unallocated to projects, so we can fund this through that unallocated fund. So I'm asking the trustees to approve the use of the $90,000, and the motion reads, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education amend the 21-22 IMR plan to include $90,000 for the Notre Dame Academy structural remediation project.
I'd like to move that, please.
Okay. So he has moved that. Is there any discussion on that?
I forgot to add one thing.
Maybe you won't move it.
Friendly amendment?
No, it's more information about why we're seeing the shifting, and it's because of soil conditions changing. We're seeing all the water table differences. There's runoff issues. We have to remember when that whole area was first there, it was prairie land, and it's been developed. People are irrigating their land. We're irrigating our own land, and it's causing the soil conditions to change. And one of the first things that is driving this is when we added the wet modular to Notre Dame Academy, we assumed the soil conditions were going to be the same. So when they drilled the screw pilings in, they weren't getting the proper torque. So we realized at that point the soil conditions had changed. So they fixed that and put the right torque and depth in. But I think it just goes to reaffirm one of the reasons of what we're seeing there is soil condition changes and irrigation flow. So
that doesn't change our motion.
it doesn't change the motion. It's just the background in terms of why we're seeing what we're seeing. Sorry about that.
That's okay. All in favor? Okay, the next one is me. It's just on the ACSTA Fees, which we haven't been billed for, and nobody in Alberta's been billed for it yet. They've been kind of waiting for the 3 boards that were standing out to kind of hear from them, and then the new people getting into the office and into their roles. So nobody has that bill yet for this, or whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees from the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education rescind motion 3811 that the Board of Trustees of the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education suspend payment to the Alberta Catholic School Trustees Association until further notice. So we're going to change that on the books. And I have a mover for that. Robert? Any discussion on that? Go ahead.
Do we know, Madam Chair, what the position of the other 2 boards are? Elk Island Catholic and Edmonton?
I spoke to Harry Sohn last week. He called me about this, and he sort of indicated that Elk Island is ready and Edmonton isn't.
Edmonton isn't?
Yeah, at this point. But that doesn't mean they won't.
Well, that would have been my guess. Edmonton Catholic has a lot more skin in the game than Elk Island or us.
Yeah.
What has been the tone? I haven't attended any of the last meetings. What has been the tone with the new board with regard to the, I guess, to the new executive? Is it what's the
To me, I find them extremely positive and open. I don't think there's going to be a lot of like they send at every meeting now. They're going to send out something that we can share with everybody, and I shared that with it's on here, and it's very open and honest in what was done at the directors meeting. So there was a small piece of in-camera stuff which stays in camera, but that's what it is. And no, I felt it was extremely a positive move. That this executive is a very good. They want everybody to play in the sandbox, and they're inviting us in.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us an update as to what's been happening with the executive director? I did see that
they actually had they had interviewed 2 people, and then we were supposed to meet on the 18th by Zoom. No, the 25th. The interviews were on the 18th, and on the 25th we were to meet by Zoom. Neither of those candidates were put forward, so they put it back. They're still looking for candidates.
I read that.
Yeah.
Is there a deadline for that, or is that open until they find someone?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that. I know we have another meeting on March 31st. So maybe by then they'll have. They have that Margot in place right now, but she, after, I think it's May 15th, she can't commit to what the time that she's there now. So they're gonna have to find somebody right away. And that's all I can say. Okay, all in favor of this? Oh, sorry, Mr. Kinch.
Chair, just one comment. So that motion occurred prior to my joining as a trustee, and just in my opinion, I'd like to know that I find that kind of regrettable that we would consider doing that simply because to be out on our own and not a part of that particular group would make it very difficult for us to lobby the government if there's issues that we need to take forward. And additionally, oftentimes in any group, there's differences of opinion, and we need to work within our associations to resolve those. And so I think, yes, we need to be a member of that, and I don't think we should consider removing ourselves.
Any other comments? Okay, let's ask the question here. All in favor? Passed. Okay, Mr. Leahy, you're next up.
Madam Chair, before I introduce this motion, I'd like to just say that when we talk about buildings moving, I think there might be something happening here. Because am I the only one? Okay. Every once in a while, there might be somebody throwing a ball off your wall in there, Mr. Holman. Because this wall kind of pops.
Probably because the door's open. So normally I close the door, then, because we're cleaning, like I don't want people in there. It's probably open now, he's probably cleaning like crazy, because he isn't in there very often.
So this wall goes on. When my family sues, yes, David did bring the issue up.
Okay.
So,
You got that, Chelsea?
that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Catholic Board of Education direct administration to develop by June 30th, 2022, 1, a division prayer, and 2, a prayer for each school.
Any discussion on that?
I think it's a great idea. I strongly support it.
And who's going to develop this? Direct administration to develop. Who's going to do that?
I think we have a division committee that'll be quite handy. Work on that work.
Just so that it's not just sitting here on the books and. David?
If I could share my dream that there would be this committee, and that for upcoming events, like it'd be a Jubilee year, or the year of St. Joseph, or the year of Mercy, or whatever, that we then, and I know some of this happens, but that it would, and that there might need to be a, what do you call that, a shared drive, or something, prayers for different occasions, that, and they have a Medicine Hat Catholic feel for them.
For like a link on our website or something?
Yeah,
Like
like, I don't know what that was called. There's the intranet, and then there's the intranet. So it's just available for people.
Mr. Kinch?
Chair, is the intent of this motion to have these prayers said at the beginning of each day for each school, that this is our school prayer that reflects the name of their school, and that a division prayer would be when we have a division meeting, that prayer would be always said and stated, so it's kind of a welcoming thing all the time? Because if it's just to have these prayers and have them stored somewhere, I don't see the point in it. But if it's going to be something that we're going to have as an action, a daily thing or an annual thing, then I think there's some value.
Mr. Leahy?
I assumed that they would be used regularly by the schools themselves, like, I just didn't want to get into that minutia with the motion. But, I welcome an amendment from Mr. Kinch if that's what he wishes. And, but I'm comfortable leaving it to administration to develop the division prayer and the prayers for the schools. And then if they want to do something with an administrative procedure, or, so I think we have a protocol procedure, admin procedure, like the school prayer, the division prayer will be read at McCoy Grad or whatever. Yeah, so I just didn't want to get into the minutia of all that. So I agree with Mr. Kinch. If the result of this is that they're not used, then that would be a failure at this point. I would hope that they would be encouraged.
Okay, and that could go to the religion committee, and they could do that. But I agree with Bernie that they should be used, and I agree with David. Like, if we're going to go into the trouble of making a prayer, we should use it. It's almost when I read through this, to me, it was almost like the land acknowledgement. It's there for a reason, and it's there to honor that particular school and that particular division.
And to pick up, to extend, I think, the logic that Deacon Risling was using earlier today when he talked about our sisters praying for the SCSL Center. We should pray. I don't want to get too corny here. We are called to pray for others, but I think it's okay to also pray for ourselves from time to time. And so, within that prayer for the division, we may pray for others, but we should also pray for our own needs and ask for God's direction and leadership that way.
Okay, so do we need to change this at all? Did you want to add anything to it?
No, Chair, I didn't want to add anything. I just wanted to make sure that we're not just going through an exercise to produce something that isn't going to be used. I think it would be a great way to start each school day at each school to have a school prayer.
Okay, so David has recommended this, so we'll do that as a motion.
Maybe we could just make a friendly amendment, after the prayer for each school that would be utilized on a regular basis,
I agree to that, Deacon Ruffin. That's fine.
just to be more specific.
Okay?
Yeah.
Got it?
Regular basis, you got it on a regular basis?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, administrative procedure budget.
I brought this forward after having two recent conversations with some staff members about, how budgets work and that kind of thing. And I asked them, well, have you been shown your school budget? And their reply was no. And so to me, do you need me to read the whole thing?
I don't need it.
Okay, so that's, I think this is just very good practice, and it's transparent. It's the accountability piece. I think that our school principals should, I forget what the name of the app is that you can go on your computer and you can bring your school budget up.
My budget file.
My budget file, you can put it on the smart board, and there it is. And there shouldn't be any secrets. I'm not saying that they're hiding it. I'm just saying that there's power in information. And the more information you get out there, the better people are going to understand their situations and some of the decisions that are made. So I think that school budgets literally should, line by line, should be shown to school staff and parents. The result of the audits to show school staff in the fall, this is how we did next year. There was a surplus or whatever. And the same thing with parent council. Parent council should know in a fairly detailed way what the school budget looks like and where things are where the money's being spent. And so that was the motivation for suggesting that we have this AP.
And this is done by the school administration, right?
Yes.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to read through it? So you're moving this then, Dave?
Yes, please.
Okay, any comments?
I like the idea, very much like the idea. I guess maybe Craig, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I don't know who else could answer it. How might this negatively impact like the schools? Like, would there be a negative other than the work that they have to do?
No, I don't think so. Most of the work would be done. My budget file is available, and this would encourage schools to ensure that that gets.
Okay, so wouldn't it be burdensome by any means, or?
No, I don't think so. The October 30th might be an issue, but we can trial it, see how it works, and if it doesn't work, then ask for permission to move it to like November 30th.
Mm-hmm.
Just to present one potential problem, Deacon Risling, that I think we should make administration aware of. I used to do this when I was a principal. I'd show the staff my budget, but there were times where I had to block out certain lines. So let's say, one year at St. Mary's, I used school money to hire a person. So like the salary was there, but the person's name, and it was, so that kind of thing you'd have to block out.
Anything that would do with VoIP would have to be.
Right.
That would cover it, right? VoIP would cover that. Mr. Kent?
Chair, Mr. McPherson, when are the schools required to submit their budget for the year? Is it end of June for the following year, or is it September 30th?
So what we do is we provide a school allocation to schools, and this is in May, and then they allocate it out, and we hold them to their allocation. If they need to exceed it and run into their accumulated operating surplus, they have to provide information to us, and then usually in October we come back to the board on getting permission for schools to access those reserves.
So generally speaking, the end of September, schools know their budget for the year. It's been designed to talk about. So then it shouldn't be too onerous, to present or have available by October 30th.
That's correct. Where some of the challenge might be is timing of meeting with the school council. So whether the principal would be ready for, let's say, an October 12th meeting or not. But those are nuances we can deal with as we go this out.
Did we want to look at maybe November then? Does it make a substantial difference?
So I'm welcoming,
So
I'm
we'll
open
change
to
that
a
to
friendly
November?
amendment for that too.
I can't make it, but somebody might want to be friendly.
Who wants to make that, to change this to November?
Well, I don't know if I can make it myself, but
Mr. Mastello. Okay, all in favor? Passed.
my next one is very near and dear to my heart. I won't read it out. I think this is a problem. And even if we don't refer to specific cases, I think just of it by itself, this is the way this should be handled in this province, that 14 and 15-year-old students should not be approached by adults trying to convince them to come to their schools to play sports. I just don't think it's the way to operate. And I think we should take a leadership role in trying to eliminate that practice. We know to get to there have been students in our division where this has happened. And I kind of in the vein of these Sisters of St. Louis Charity Center, we've needed a theater for a long time. Anyway, to me, it's about time we did something about it finally, as opposed to just talking about it, recognizing it, and kind of complaining about it. So that's my motivation behind this motion.
I'm behind this 100%. The rules that are there now, and I might be wrong about this, but they apply just to the high school kids,
That's
right?
correct.
There's nothing in there for the junior high.
That's correct.
Why is that?
When I've talked to Janice up there, Janice Lang, Mrs. Lang, and I understand, and Janice is not part of this, but the answer is it's just high school sports.
Okay.
Right? The guidelines and it's the high school sports. So this piece just hasn't been I can tell you that I've been in conversation with some football coaches, and they say this this is much needed. This isn't a situation that is just Medicine Hat. This isn't our issue here, that these guys I've talked to are in Edmonton, and they say it's a major issue.
Yeah, I would guess the bigger the center, the more.
Right. There's even issues within districts sometimes. You know, like, I won't name schools, but
Right. Okay, so you with this?
move this, please.
Just a question.
Oh, sorry.
Who do you want the letter coming from? Trustee McGee?
I had it from administration. Do you want it to be from the board chair?
Oh, just want to know who signs the dotted line. That's all.
Who should it be?
Normally, the only time that it really matters, I think, is if it's going to the minister. Then that should be from the board chair. Otherwise, everything else is pretty clear.
I think it should come from the board. Is my opinion.
I just think it's absolutely necessary, and I think they need to come up with some junior high guidelines. And that would take care of all of this.
So senior men could write it and then you sign it?
Sure. Is that okay? Good.
The way it's fine.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions? All in favor? One more, Mr. Leahy.
Thank you. This is mostly me and my, what?
OCD.
Thank you. Because I do go over these fairly detailed. I wish I had more time to do it. And I think if there are others out there, when I say others, ratepayers too, you know, unless they go to our webpage and see these things after the fact, they wouldn't see them at all if they didn't know that, you know, because sometimes it's not part of the board package until after the fact or late. So that's why I wish I had more time to look at these things. And then I think we owe it to our ratepayers that we try as best as possible to have these things, these quarterly updates as part of the package when it's linked on Fridays.
Is that a big issue? A week before?
Well, I'll give you this month's example.
Okay.
February 28th was Monday. So the Tuesday, like March 1st, would be the date that we would have to have the quarterly report available. Like, that's just not feasible. But it's hours.
Yeah, well, I guess the other option would be to delay the report for a month, and then you could have it
For the fall.
for the following month. Then you could have the time in between to look at it.
And then we could have it 2 weeks before the board meeting.
Yeah, I don't want to, once again, I didn't want to get into the minutia of it all. All I'm looking for is to have more time to look at these reports before they're discussed at the board meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would that be the preference then, to delay the sharing of the quarterly report by a month, and then there's more lead up time to it?
I guess if that's how it has to work, that's how it has to.
Well,
As opposed to not having enough time to look at it. And part of this is driven, and this is not a complaint about our finance department. You know, Mr. McPherson was talking about, you know, the change of the funding framework and all this, and forecasting, and Geek and Robert talked about these changes that we're seeing. To me, it's important that we're staying on top of that in terms of our own knowledge and awareness and our own accountability. So I don't feel that I have the amount of time that I personally need, and I recognize once again it could be me, to go into this stuff and learn what I need to learn. So, once again, I didn't put the minutiae in, so if you come back and you say, David, this is what it's gonna be, I'd rather take that than not have it, not having it, a total exaggeration, and being in the current situation.
I think, because the only other route around it would be when we're planning our board meetings, to delay the board meeting then, like for next year, in those dates, knowing that if it comes out on the 28th, we'll push the board meeting back a week or whatever the case may be, so that there's just more time, because unfortunately, some of the board meetings, the way they get, just based on the routineness of it, doesn't leave a lot of time to do that. So,
Does the provincial government's budget come out on a specific date like consistently, so it's just random? So how would this motion negatively impact you, Greg? And how would, like, we're delaying it, like saying you come out with the budget later and we discuss it at a month later, how would that negatively impact you?
So this isn't dealing with the budget, this is dealing with the quarterly plan.
Yeah, with the report, yeah.
Update. So the, as worded, again, using this month, Monday was my.
Yeah,
my
no,
plan.
I get that.
On Tuesday, I would have to issue the report, which frankly, there just isn't enough time.
So if you were to delay the report, would
that would provide additional time for us to do further analysis, get it to the trustees in accordance then with the intent of what the recommendation is. And
so that wouldn't negatively impact you then?
It would positively impact me.
Okay.
Because the update is the update, it's not the.
Right.
Just tell us how we're doing. Right?
Chair, I was just gonna comment is, I don't think I personally would like to see us change from our assigned Tuesday that we always have our board meeting. I think making it fluctuate would cause confusion.
Yeah.
No,
I don't want to see that either. But no, I think if we do this the way it is, we could even do it 2 weeks or whatever you want. But if it happens like this week or like this month, it was impossible. But other times it's not. So as long as we have that 1 week.
well, sorry, Chair, if we were going to delay it by a month, though, then I think the expectation could be that it's out 2 weeks in advance, whatever it is, because that gives us lots of time then.
Yeah, I think the way the motion is worded is that whenever we're gonna have the board meeting to talk about the financial quarterly report, it's out a week ahead of time. And if that's, the second quarter is now gonna be looked at in April as opposed to March. It's fine.
So just leave it at 1 week still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? All right, committee reports. ATA negotiations, Mr. Mestel.
There's nothing to report at this time, Chair.
Okay, QP negotiation, Mr. Rizzo.
nothing to report.
That sounded weird, Mr. Rizzo. Teacher board advisory, Mr. Kinch.
Chair, we will be having a meeting in April, so at this point, nothing to report.
Deacon Roberts, support staff board advisory committee.
The reports there, if there are any questions.
Any questions of Deacon Robert? QP support staff advisory committee, Mr. Leahy.
The report's there. Thank you to Mr. McPherson.
Okay, any questions on that? Student board advisory committee, that's me. I've never done this. What is?
So.
What am I supposed to be doing here?
We kind of put that on hold because of COVID, but now that our COVID, we have some more wiggle room there. Are you ready? You want to? Should we?
Yeah, for sure.
For later this month.
Yeah, I've just never done anything. The audit committee, we're meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow. And CSL Center Committee, Mr. Leahy. you have anything you want to say with that?
Just, I'm assuming, and Dr. Zurich, you can help me with this one person, we don't need a motion to expand the committee, do we? Okay. And thank you. And just to muddy the water a little bit about, how we're gonna do this and the plans and all that kind of, I will note that in the paper today, the paper reported on the facilities recreation plan that the city is going to be putting together. And that one of the recommendations is that they stop operating the Moose and the hockey hounds. And at one time, the Friends of McCoy did contact the city to inquire if they might be in, as one of the alternatives we discussed, if that could be a possible site for a theater. So, if they decide to do that, but depending on what our other discussions are, that might be an alternative to look at. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, is there any questions for Mr. Leahy? All right. Mr. Mestel, ASBA, did you have anything for that?
There's no report, no.
Okay, and I have attached the one from the ACSBA. And after every director's meeting, they are going to send that report to everybody, because that was one of the complaints last time, is that they weren't giving up enough information. So they're going to do this from now on. Education Foundation, Mr. Kinch.
Yes, Chair, we're continuing to meet. Plans are proceeding for the golf tournament and sponsorships are trying to be tracked down.
Are we expected to be at the golf tournament? Like, do we have a job there? Just, the only reason I'm asking that is because St. Vincent de Paul was asked to have two names come forward for that putting thing that we normally do. So we need to know if we have a job there. I need to know. If I don't, that's
I
great.
believe everybody is going to get a role of some sort,
Okay.
unless they're actually planning to participate in the golf tournament itself.
Okay, Parent Association, we're meeting on the last Monday of this month. We didn't meet last month. Spiritual Leadership Scholarship, Mr. Leahy?
Nothing to report. That's just a 1 year, once a year.
Once a year. Teacher Employee, TIBA, Mr. Mestel?
Madam Chair, that report was given in the committee of the whole.
Right. Okay. I think we're done. Closing prayer. Mr. Mestel, are you there yet?
I'm with you now.
Okay.
It took a while, but I made it. I had some help.
I'm glad you caught up.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, thank you for being with us during this meeting and for having guided our thoughts, words, and actions. Stay with us now as we leave this meeting and return to our respective lives. Help us to keep you as you are now in our thoughts, words, and actions. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hey, again. Yes.
Oh, I like it.
Of course, St. Michael's has it in the back.
Thank you.
Right?